pharmaceutical industry has been given more special treatment by the government than almost any other industry operating in this country. They get subsidies, government contracts, and tax breaks at a rate that is nearly unprecedented. And yes, they make products that have the potential to save lives, but they also keep these drugs priced so high that people are dying from a lack of access. And I have Howard Nations with me now to tell us why this is happening. Howard, you've squared off with the pharmaceutical industry, countless times in courtrooms. You've gone through documents. You know more than most people know about the industry as a whole. But today a little different. Not necessarily talking about negligence. We have the issue that the drug prices are so high in America today, and mostly only in America, that people are dying from a lack of access. Talk about this a little bit.
Well, what's happening here, Farron, is that the fourth branch of government, the lobbyists, are writing the laws, and now they're trying to take that into an international basis. You look at the macroeconomic entities that rule this country. You got big agriculture, big energy, you got the big technology, you've got big defense. The military-industrial complex is such that Eisenhower could have never even dreamed of. You got big healthcare now, where the corporations own hospitals, and the profit motive has replaced the healthcare motive. And then you've got big pharma, where diseases, they decide which diseases will be attacked based upon economic motivation. They decide who gets access to healthcare, who gets access to their pharmaceutical products, and essentially they decide who lives or dies. And the problem is big pharma is catering to the rich, to the insured, and basically the poor can fend for themselves. But the question is, and this is what we need to talk about, should big pharma be held to a public service standard as well? Big pharma is protected by the government. They get huge tax benefits. They get loose government regulation. They get expedited access to markets. They get patent protection, long-term protection against generics. So shouldn't there be a quid pro quo in there for basic health care of citizens?
You would think there would be. And, a great point to add on to that is the fact that when we had the big Ebola scare, that infected 3 or 4 people and everybody thought they were going to be the next one to get it.
Yeah.
We could have had an Ebola vaccine decades ago, except that wasn't a disease that was in America. That was
right.
Over in African countries, very, very poor countries where they didn't even have clean water. So there's no profit there. I mean, they were on the brink of having the vaccine for it and stopped because they realized there was no money in it. And now this is just the way things are right now at the moment. And thanks to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, things are about to get much, much worse in terms of drug costs. Lay that part out for us, because I think that is a huge issue that we need to be talking about.
It is a big issue. The TPP is the largest trade agreement ever. It controls trade and commerce for the United States and 11 other Pacific Rim countries whose joint economies account for 40% of the world's GDP. We're looking particularly at the intellectual property chapter, which greatly impacts big pharma. Unless significant changes are made in the current proposal on TPP, it will significantly raise drug prices and hinder access to critical medicines, especially in developing countries. Now, what they're seeking in this agreement, for which they were at the table, they being Big Pharma was at the table where this thing's being negotiated, even though the United States Congress was not. It seeks patent protection that keeps the drug prices as high as possible for as long as possible by delaying generic access to the marketplace. The U.S. has such strict rules. The result is, as you mentioned, the U.S. has the highest drug prices significantly in the world, and it's certainly higher than other TPP countries. So the U.S. negotiators have an opportunity now to advocate for pro-consumer policies, to reject Big Pharma's push for longer patent protection and other regulatory protections that delay generics. Are they going to do it? We'll have to see.
One thing we've talked about on the show in the past is the fact that the markup percentage on prescription drugs in the United States, in some cases, it really is 20 1,000%. Drugs like Zoloft, Xanax, the markup is between 10 and 20,000%. Now, when you look at Canada, the drugs sold there, where they have universal health care and a great system that works phenomenally for the citizens, their drug markups are about 10%. And you know what happens there for the pharmaceutical industry? They're still making huge profits. They're not losing money. They're making money because more people can afford it. And it's just, to me, it almost seems like a basic misunderstanding of economic concepts that when more people can afford your product, more people will buy your product, increasing your profit. Or have I totally missed something here with Big Pharma?
No, let me tell you what's going to happen with TPP if this thing is ratified. That goes right along with what you're saying. The U.S. lawmakers will not be able to change policy in the United States, to change our laws or our regulations to reduce huge drug prices in the U.S. without violating this TPP treaty. There's a ridiculous provision in there that would cover, for example, they're talking about a 12-year patent protection, 12 years for biologics. Now, what happens is Obama is proposing 7 years for biologics. But just to show you the effect of the TPP, if the United States, if this passed and it's ratified, and the United States then tried to reduce the time of protection from 12 years to 7 years, or if they actually did that, passed new legislation saying, no, there's 7 years legislation protection, the pharmaceutical company could then come in and sue the U.S. taxpayers for 5 years of lost profits. That's billions of dollars. They could sue us directly. It's crazy. And this is the kind of provision you get when the lobbyists are the ones drafting the provisions. Biologics, 12-year protection, well, there aren't very many biologics. Right now, biologic drugs, which are made from living cells, are 40% of all the drugs that are currently in development. So while there aren't many on the market now, in the future, when this treaty is very much in effect, 12 years will be the time it takes before a generic can enter the market to try to reduce the price and bring it within a reachable and affordable realm for most countries and most individuals.
I think people need to pay more attention to the pharmaceutical industry. They're not out there like the oil industry, polluting everything and marking up prices. They're not like the big banks that are just flat out stealing from people. But they do wield just as much power in Washington as those other industries. The only flip side is that they do produce these life-saving drugs. Unfortunately, they've priced them out of the hands of most Americans. And Howard, I appreciate you telling us this story today.
Well, your last example on that, just look at Medicare alone. Medicare drug costs increased 45% in the year 2014 alone. There's a projection that it will quadruple from 2012 in 5 years from now. And you have to look at Obama on this. He's thinking more about his legacy than he is about his base at this point.
Absolutely. Howard, thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure.